if you're going to develop a strong character voice and one that feels legitimate, like it comes from a place that the reader can understand, you must have a backstory for the character and you must understand the culture that spawned that character. Because without those two things, your character voice will feel fake.
Releasing your inner dragon.
So, Drake, if you have to describe character voice, what would you say that it is?
It's creating a character that just how he talks is memorable and impactful to the reader long after they finish reading the book. Something you just remember about this. I mean, we didn't talk about this earlier, but one of the big ones that everyone knows, there are the two big ones, Gollum and Jar Jar Binks.
Mm.
Not saying they're good. I'm saying they're memorable.
Misa think I'ma stab you.
But it's memorable. It's not leaving the psyche anytime soon. So,
So, do you think that character voice is synonymous with character dialogue?
well, so here's the problem. So many characters are just, and everyone's a victim of this. So you just can't be. So many characters are just you remember the character and the character's moral compass and motivation and failures and accomplishments. But it is hard to create a character who has a voice that you remember how they talk.
Mm.
So like Walter Slavosky from Guardians of the Flame series, the jock
Yep.
that's also the nerd that, was completely narcissistic, but like he had a way of talking and it was different than any like most of the other characters in there. I really can't tell you the difference. Even though I loved Carl Cullinan as a character, did he really talk any different from Adhira? Or did he really talk
Yep.
different from, whoever? But Walter Savatsky, yeah, I remember his tone, his way of speaking, how he communicated with others.
Mm.
Just like, my two bad examples are not as good examples at the beginning of this. Like you remember them. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do.
So I agree, but I also think that character dialogue is just a portion of character
Hmm.
voice.
Yeah.
Because I think that character voice can also include things like body language, how the character sees the world, their philosophical point of view, even the impact of their culture on them, and so on. And I think that character voice is a more comprehensive thing than just dialogue, although dialogue is certainly a very important part of, and
Yeah.
one of the key ways to do character voice, obviously, is through dialogue.
Hmm. Well, and especially if they're a secondary or tertiary character, that's really all you get. So their
Yes.
actions and their dialogue is the only thing. That's how we get their moral compass. That's how we get their motivation. That's how we get their loves and fears. That's how we get everything because we can only get what they say and do. You
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Now in the POV character, the narration is a part of that. Depending on how much I mean, third person, it's hard to give each character a different, unique voice. I try very hard to, but it's still something most people don't notice. But like I use
Mm.
different word choices for like the beast chapter and different sentence structure for the beast chapter than I do for the farm boys chapter than I do for the alien chick who's an assassin killing machine that I do for, the mercenary. I do
Yeah.
try to vary it, but it's still I mean, I'm still the writer of the narration. So it's hard to kind of vary those. But
I
you get their
think
inner
that
monologue.
one of the ways that I've found that helps to distinguish POV characters, and I'm not saying I do this perfectly or anything like that, but one of the ways that I feel distinguishes characters is if they have kind of signature ways in which they express worry or fear or tension or something that
Hmm.
happens fairly frequently, like they've got a specific gesture that only they use to express that emotion. Because that then became, especially if you must tie that into their backstory. It can't be like a generic thing, like they always knot their fists and nobody else knots their fists. That's not realistic, right? But it can be something like, I have a character now that has a ring that she wears on her thumb that is a ring of her academic education, right? And when she's stressed, she turns the ring on her thumb.
Hmm.
Right? It's not an unusual gesture. People do fiddle with their jewelry, but it is an item that is individual and unique to that character and one she's proud of, for achieving that mastery and so on. So that kind of thing can help a great deal to kind of set a character's narration apart in terms of your shows.
Yeah. Yeah. Body language, body gesture. Um, you know, I don't think people think enough about how the fact that you don't really need a lot.
Mm,
Um, so, like, obviously, we have the movies, but if you just read the Harry Potter books, really all you get from Harry Potter is he's got kind of mussy brown hair, round glasses, and a scar on his forehead.
mm.
Like, you know, and it may be in there, but I don't think anybody really remembers. And I mean, obviously, there's Uber fans out there, but the average reader is not going to remember his eye color or how tall he is or what his
I mean, they
body
might remember
structure.
his eye color because they make a big deal out of his eyes.
Do
He has
they?
his mother's eyes. The good
Yeah,
Lord
but what was
knows.
that? What does that look
Green, I
like?
think.
Oh, were they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I don't.
think so.
It's been too long since I've read Harry Potter.
Mm.
But the big thing is you get those, and so if if you're in a let's say you're in a different POV that doesn't know the character, and then this boy comes walking by and he goes, "Wow, that's weird. That scar on his forehead kind of looks like a lightning bolt." Like everyone
Mm.
knows, it's so distinctive, and that's what I try to do. The thing that I try to do with my characters is come up with one or two things, and this has nothing to do with their voice. This is just their memorability,
Mm.
the ability to remember them for the reader. So one or two things is really all you need, and the reader can really paint a good picture of that character. And so the reason why I'm going on that path is to say it's the same thing with voice. Like if I were to say it's elementary, my dear Watson, like everyone knows which character that comes from. It's
Yeah.
not you don't need anything else. And so a little catchphrase or a little motion, like you were talking about playing with the ring or whatever, any of those things with Savatsky, he always flipped the dagger. And it was something that was, he's always fiddling with that dagger, flipping it, throwing it, flipping it, spinning it. And it was kind of a part of his character as you continue going. And he also, if you paid attention, it kind of told you what he was thinking. Depending on what
Mm.
he was doing with the knife, you could kind of guess what was going on inside of that character.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really cool as far as a way to have that character, because that's really what we're trying to do is we're taking words and we're trying to make them memorable, trying to make it to where, okay, I'm hearing this thing, so I automatically know it's this character and they're in this mind state. And that's really what we're trying to do with that. Going as deep as we're going. I mean, obviously character voice is obviously just a lot of the dialogue as well. But I think it's more than that. I think the reason why we try to strive for it is to make it to where the readers distinguish them from one another.
Yeah. Yes. Especially your POV characters. And that brings me to an interesting topic that I think we should explore, which is the difference between author voice and character voice. Now, here I just want to distinguish between first person and third person, because honestly, first person should be all character voice. You shouldn't have authorial voice in first person. That's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
But authorial, what do you think is the difference between authorial voice and character voice?
It's kind of exactly what I was just talking about, what I'm trying to do, like what I try to do with my multi POV characters. I try to, with Klain, the beast, I try to make the verbs very violent. The sentence is shorter. Oh, we just fell off the table.
You did, hold on. What happened there?
ATM, ATM. Um, so it's, I try to do that, but
Mm.
unfortunately, I also have my narrative voice. I have my turn of phrases that I tend to use. I have my transition devices that I tend to use. We try to be as varied as possible, but we are still human and we tend to, lean on certain things.
So I will say that I don't in third person, even in close, even in limited, as we try to write in, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having an authorial voice. You do, after all, read an author for an
Right,
authorial voice.
right.
Right? Yeah, of course, in omniscient, you need a much stronger authorial voice. You need a very definitive authorial voice because in omniscient, people are reading you for that voice,
Yeah,
not for the character voices,
yeah.
right? But even in limited, you should still have an authorial voice that is your unique writing
Mhm.
style because
I don't
it
know if you
is.
can get away from that though.
Hmm?
I don't know if you can get away from. I mean, like I'm actively trying to get away from it, and I
Yeah.
can't. So
No, no. But I mean, that is the difference as well.
yeah,
So between an authorial voice and a character voice, it's just
yeah.
just so people understand. And there is like I don't think you want to eliminate it in full. Like I don't think so. I think you do want to have your authorial voice because people read you for a style,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know? Like
100%.
if one quarter of the book is not in that style at all,
Yeah.
well,
Well, and I haven't had the conversation, but I'm very interested. But one of the guys from the writers' room the other day when we were in I was in a teaching kind of thing, and he asked me. Oh no, it was the money. I do the monthly free Q&A for anybody. So if you are out there and you want to have an opportunity to sit down with me for 4 hours once a month and just ask me whatever you want, join the writers' room. It's, join the free area of the writers' room because it's a part of that. So if you join the free area, one of the things, and there's many things like this podcast, you can actually sit in and watch us as we record this podcast, and you can make comments, and sometimes we actually even include those comments depending on what's going on. But one of the things that you have access to are my free monthly Q&A. So it was that. And he asked me where the Son of the Empire came from.
mm,
And I went down the path of where the world came from, where the idea came from, where the story. And he's like, no, 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 no. It doesn't read like you.
mm,
It reads so different from the Genesis saga. And I'm like, well, the Genesis saga is definitely darker. And he's like, no, it's different than that. And then I said I would be interested if you read like my Harnworld story, the Carnage Across. And he goes, I have. And that reads just like you. And I'm like, that's interesting that you think Son of the Empire. And so I haven't had the conversation yet about, because I do want to have that conversation with him about what is it that's different, because I don't think it's different. It's just me. I mean,
it is different though.
it's a lighter world.
No,
It's a brighter world.
no, no. It reads like a D&D adventure.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I mean, you're not wrong because it's subjective. So you're 100% right with
Yeah.
how you feel about it. Um, I'm just saying I don't think it makes me feel that,
No,
but
I
maybe.
get
I mean,
that.
I can kind of
But
see
what
it.
I'm saying is like it reads like it reads like an encapsulated one-shot adventure.
Oh yeah, 100%, because that's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. But I mean, the magic, everything feels very D&D.
I mean, there's no magic in it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
There's magic items from what I remember and
there's a light stone and there's a few things like
yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, for the most part, it's just three rangers out in the woods hunting a monster.
Mm,
That is literally the whole story.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm just interested to have that conversation because you know
Mm,
we are blind to our own writing, and
yeah.
the only way we start really understanding how our writing is affecting others is to actually listen to others and have them give us that feedback of this is what you make me feel. And so I am interested in having that discussion because that no one's ever said that to me. So that was an interesting thing to have dropped in my lap. Um, so I don't know, and maybe I did change my authorial voice because I do see that story different. You know, I do see that world different and everything like that. So perception of what you're writing has a lot to do with it. But the funny thing is he's read my children's script, the Snurse, the Magic Fairy Tale, and he felt that was my authorial, and that's just script. It's not even in prose, but he felt that that lined up with my writing. And we're talking about a kids movie that's fun and funny and all of that. So I don't know. It and author voice is really interesting to me, and it does take a while to develop kind of your style and what you focus on because that's really what it is. So like you get very little color in my world because I don't pay attention to colors. I don't pay attention that this is red and that's blue and the curtains are white and they're just stuff. And so I'm just not a like we play this
Oh,
game called
I pay
what?
attention to colors.
Oh yeah, I know you do. Um, but we play this game called Mysterium, and it's basically like Clue, but one person is a ghost and they're passing out these things called vision cards, and they're just really crazy cards, but you're trying to get them to guess something like who did it or what they did it with or what room it was in. And I literally have to tell people that have never played with me when we start, I was like, don't look at the color. Like just because the color of the one of the murderers is green and the card I give you has a lot of green in it, I promise you I wasn't looking at that. Like I just don't think like that. So I don't know. It's everyone has different things that we pay attention to. Some people are more into the clothing aesthetics. Some people are more into whatever. And I think that's goes a big way of separating author voice. So for me, it's emotion. I want all the interior emotion. I want all of it. And so all of my stories are very dripping in the feels of everything. What is
Yeah,
everything feeling? And that to me is the most important thing. And so that's what I spend the vast majority of my attention on.
yeah.
But some writers won't even write interior emotion. They don't. And I had somebody at a group a couple months ago that I had read something to as an example, and she said, "Yeah, and this is why I don't think I can read you. Reading that, just hearing you read it made me uncomfortable." And it was a scene. It was just a scene where it's the scene where the husband is leaving the wife and going on the adventure. And so it's this very sad, very touching, kind of heart wrenching moment. She's like, "Yeah, it made me uncomfortable. I don't want to read that." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's why there are so many different types of writers out there."
Yep.
And she also was like, "And I don't want to write that." I'm like, "And you don't have to. I'm not I'm not here to tell you you must do this."
Yeah.
Because we weren't even talking about that. I think I was teaching something completely different. But she just happened to bring up the fact of how emotional the scene was and how, so much in the feels that I am. But that's what I like. And so I think that goes a long way to creating our author voice. And then unfortunately that translates into also because my characters tend to be more feely because I'm more feely. So like I think how you look at the world and how you approach what you feel is important about stories to convey to the audience is also going to go a long way of not only creating your author voice, but creating your character voices as well. So my characters are, on the grand scheme of things, if you looked at all of the fantasy as a whole, I would say that mine are on the higher end of emotionally driven, feely type characters.
Yes. And that is, I mean, it's important to understand what you like in terms of authorial voice.
Hmm.
Like there are authors that I read even if like the subject matter is not that interesting to me because I love their voices. Like I love how they write. It just I feel like I'm wrapped in a cozy little blanket of awesomeness, when
As
I
much as
read
I
them.
despise Neil Gaiman, I still love reading him because of his author voice. He's got,
Yeah.
for me, one of the best authorial voices that exists on the planet. It is
Mm.
exactly what you said. It's just, it literally takes you like a little baby and it swaddles you in this warm, fresh out of the dryer blanket. And then he holds you next to him and he cuddles you with all the love and affection you could ever want. There's
Yeah.
a lot of reasons why I do not like him, but his author voice, I can't think of anyone out there that has a better author voice. And then his actual voice. So when he's reading, when he narrates his
Yes.
own stuff, I'll just listen to that just to listen. I don't even need to hear what the story is. I just want to listen to you read. You could read the phone book, Neil, and I will be enthralled. Um, Somebody did say something that I want to comment on because they had said,
Mm.
I can't wait to save up some pennies so I can get a couple of Drake's books because whatever I said piqued her interest. But here's the thing, you can go to starvingwriterstudio.com. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the section on the Genesis of Oblivion talking about, that's the next book I'm coming out. And there's a link in there that says download the first 15 chapters for free. So it's almost 70,000 words. So it's almost as big. The free section is almost as big as the first Harry Potter book. Because I think the first Harry Potter was like 78,000 words or something like that. So if you go to Starving Writer Studio, click on that link. It'll cost you your email address. That's it. But those that are out there, you really should be subscribed to mine and Marie's newsletters anyway, because then you can keep up on what we're doing. And, every month, now that my wife is full time working for, Starving Writer Studio, I've got newsletters going out for the first time in 20 years on a regular monthly basis. They have not only all the stuff that's going on with me and Marie and kind of what I'm doing in my world and all the teaching in the writer's room and everything like that, but there's always a section of something that I wrote, either some work in progress. This last month, we gave out one of my short stories. And then there's a section in there of just what I'm doing, what I've done over this last 30 days, both in personal life and professional life and everything like that. So it's not a huge expense to sign up for the email list to get the free 15 chapters. So that's that's what you should do if you want to read me. You don't even have to save up any pennies. It's all free.
All
I just
right.
want people to
So
read me.
let's get back on track with character voice. So we've
Yes.
spoken about the difference between authorial voice and character voice, and we've spoken a little bit about dialogue versus character voice. Um, let's talk about
Let
why.
me let me ask a question.
Sure.
How do you feel? Because I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about this.
Hmm.
How do you feel, or why do you feel, or why would you feel, or even do you feel that a character's backstory? Because you mentioned it earlier, this thing, but
Yeah.
how is it that you feel a character backstory ties into their current voice that they have in the story that you're writing?
So, as the person who probably loves world building most, and who's like the arch world builder, I have to tell you that I think character backstory and cultural background are two of the most key critical parts of building a character voice. Because the characters' gestures, their way of thinking, their dialogue, their internal monologue, all of those attributes don't come from nowhere. No character is unconnected. Or if they're unconnected, they're with the best will in the world, they're a shitty ass character.
Yeah,
Sorry.
they feel it. They
Yeah.
100% feel it.
um, a character does not exist in a vacuum. They are the product of their relationship, their history, their culture, their lived experience, their process of growing up. All of these things impact the character.
Their parental units or lack thereof,
All of those things. Their siblings, their cousins, their everything, their society,
religion, yeah, all of it.
all of it. So if you're going to develop a strong character voice and one that feels legitimate, like it comes from a place that the reader can understand, you must have a backstory for the character and you must understand the culture that spawned that character. Because without those two things, your character voice will feel fake,
So
right?
what are the, go ahead.
In what universe do you have a forward-thinking scientist type character coming out of a dark ages, mud hole village? Like, you
Yeah.
might have a genius level intellect, but they still wouldn't be educated, forward thinking, capable of putting all the chemical things together without going somewhere for an education.
Yeah. So, what are some things that we should think about that would help us accomplish that? What are some tips and tricks?
So I think that one of the critical aspects that you want to think about is, what is the character proud of? Right? What is the character most proud of in their life? Because that is probably something that they fall back on in moments of stress. Right? When you're feeling insecure, when you're feeling like, shy, and you're feeling like you're put under pressure, it's very, not everybody does this, but many people do this. They fall back on their achievements. They fall back on, but I have achieved these and these things. And if you have something physically that reminds you of that achievement, it is very easy to kind of close your hand over that and think of it as a thing of strength. Okay. Another thing is your family connections. Like, let's say you have a family heirloom, like a necklace, or somebody in the chat mentioned the necklace, or a photo or anything like that, something that reminds you of your family. Your family can be a source of strength. In the same way, the character can have something that draws on a source of strength. I'll tell you, like, I really like John Gwain. Okay, I've read most of his books, but there's one of his series that really annoyed me, because there's this character who's a POV character who, every time they panic, they check their pulse. Now, I grant you that that is a unique character trait, but I'm like, how does this fit? How does this fit the world, or the character, or the anything? Like, he's not a doctor. His father doesn't come from a doctor. He's living in a medieval world. Like, why? Why would pulse checking be the thing that he, you know, gravitates to? It didn't work for me on so many levels. I could not make the connection between the character's background and the character's go-to fidget. Like,
He doesn't understand that it's blood. He thinks it's the type of magic that he uses, and he's seeing if it's strengthening or weakening. I don't.
maybe, but it just it
I don't.
just didn't work. It
Right.
just felt wrong for the world.
Hmm.
It felt like something that you would teach a child maybe now who's on the spectrum,
Hmm.
you know, and I just and maybe that's where he took it from, but it didn't feel right for the world. Um,
Yeah, that leads me to a question I want to ask, but it's completely off topic, so I'll skip it. Um, well, the question that's been right around in my mind is, how do we balance the audience that we have, which is today's audience, and their moral compasses and their social, focuses and everything like that, with a world that shouldn't normally fit with any of our modern ideals.
well, see, this is the thing. Like, here I've got to say that you can make the world do anything. It's the first thing. Okay. Our world did not have to develop into a patriarchal social model.
Right.
It developed into a patriarchal social model because of our marriages, which developed around the woman moving away from her family to the man's family. Right. Anyway, long stories.
Yeah.
Regardless, we didn't have to go down that route.
Hmm.
Okay. But we did. Most of
Yeah.
societies did, because of warriors, etc., etc., etc. And that's fine.
And we
Okay.
talked about that when we were talking about the
Yeah.
magic class, about if
Yeah.
women could were the only ones that could use magic, then they would have
Exactly. You can
all the
change it that
protection
way, you
power.
can change it this way. You can even
Yeah.
just change the sociology for whatever reason. There were cultures who went down matrilineal routes or equalitarian routes, etc.
Hmm.
Um, but so firstly, that's the first thing. You can do anything you want in your world.
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about fantasy.
That's the beautiful thing about fantasy. The thing that I think, and of course, I mean, the thing is, if people in your world speak about freaking, I don't know, the humors in their blood, the humors of their four elements, then I mean, whoever reads it is going to go, okay, they know nothing about medical science, and that's fine. You know, you're clearly suffering from demons because that's what everybody thought in that kind of world, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think where people run into trouble with that kind of societal thing where they get hammered sometimes is when they are so blatant. So I'll pick our favorite Terry Brooks, not Terry Brooks, Terry Goodkind.
Very good kind.
I'll pick on our
Because Terry
favorite
Brooks is a
hobby
really
horse
cool
of Terry
dude.
Goodkind. In the later books of Terry Goodkind, right? His protagonist defeats communism, and I mean it's not even like allegorical at this point. Okay, it's straight up just Ayn Rand, fanboying basically, and with the whole philosophy of objectivism, and he defeats communism by building statues, like um. Like it's just it's so heavy-handed and so obvious. Or The Fifth Sorceress is a great example. All right, it came out in 2005, and it was so misogynistic. Like I can take a lot of, male-orientated stuff because I grew up with a lot of it. It's fine, generally speaking. But this dude, the only evil witches in the world were all women, and they were all evil. I'm like, my man. you know, it draws a very interesting parallel between the Catholic Church burning a whole lot of women and your book. you know? Um, and he afterwards, when people panned him, he was like, the book's not meant to be misogynistic, and maybe it wasn't. Maybe he's just like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing that, and I stress so hard in the writer's room. One of my Drakeisms is you as the writer do not get to decide if you're successful in what you've written. It's
Yeah,
not in your wheelhouse to decide that. You must let other people tell you that. You
yeah.
must have other people because yeah, let's say this is the case and he 100% had no idea that that's what he's doing. That
Mm,
that's that doesn't matter.
yeah.
It doesn't matter what you were attempting to do. It only matters what the vast majority, because it's never going to be 100. This is all subjective, so it's never going to be 100% of anything. But if a majority of people believe that your book makes them feel this, this way
Mm,
over here, then guess what? Your book makes them feel that way. Like there
yeah.
is no, it doesn't matter if that's not what
No.
you're intending. It doesn't matter if you like if it appalls you that people believe that the words that you wrote in the order that you wrote those words makes those people feel that.
Yeah.
So,
Like there's one of my friends at least who feels that the Dresden Files is very misogynistic. Now, I don't agree with them, right? It doesn't make me feel that way. I think that the Dresden Files is a good lesson to the character in why his old-fashioned attitude actually is not working in a modern world.
right.
But regardless, like she is right to feel that way.
Yeah.
It's what the book makes her feel. You can't tell her, no, it doesn't make you feel like that. Obviously, it makes her feel like that. She feels like that.
Yep.
And she's not wrong to feel like that. She's just not in the majority.
Right. And that's
You
the
know?
thing. And this is why, like in my writers groups, I love it when people like somebody will say, I felt this in this paragraph.
Mm.
And in so many writers groups, everyone will, there might be someone in that group that feels differently, but they will just keep their mouth shut. And I hate that. I encourage them to use the words, you know what, I'm going to push back on that. And that's the term we always use. And it's a term that what we're saying is, I'm not saying you're wrong because you're right, but this is how it made me feel. And the reason why I think that's so important is because it lets the writer hear the two sides. And then, if
Mm.
there's five people in the room and four of them feel the way you were hoping they would feel, and one of them feels differently, that's way different in how you should think about whether you should change that or how much you should change it or whatever, as opposed to four people feeling a way you didn't want them to feel and one person feeling the way you did. So it's
Exactly.
very, very important to get that feedback and be open for it and not be challenging. It's like like I wrote this thing and you go, well, it made me feel X. I'm like, no, it didn't. It made you feel Y. Because
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to make you feel. And you're like, okay, but it made me feel X. Like, I'm sorry.
Clearly it didn't, because it made me feel like that. And
And
that's the
then
thing.
as
Like,
the author, you need to make the change.
yeah,
If what you've written makes people feel something you don't want them to feel, then it's your fault. It's
yeah.
not their fault.
No, it's not. And the thing is, like I always say, like every reader brings their own baggage with them to the
Yes.
book, right? And that baggage could make them see things that are clearly not on the page.
Yeah. 100%.
The question is, what is the majority of readers? Like what is like 80% of readers? What do they feel?
Yep.
Because there are going to be people who read your book with a very, very like specific background, who read it and the book triggers badly on their baggage, and it makes them feel something completely different from what you intended.
Yep.
And you cannot cater for all of that.
You will
General
never bat a
public.
thousand.
Yeah,
You'll never bat a thousand as an author. It's
yeah,
impossible.
exactly.
Everything we do is subjective. And
Yeah,
yeah, that's why Drake's rule of 10 is 8 out of 10.
yeah,
That's what you're shooting for. You want 8 out of every 10 people that read your thing to feel the way you were hoping that they would feel. And if it's less than that, you need to adjust. You need to change. And so
mm,
that comes to the author voice too, and that comes to the character voice. If you're hoping that you're creating a character voice that does something, or if you want your author voice to be a certain way, then when you listen to other people critique your writing, when you get that feedback, then that's what you need to be. That's why my beta questions are so specific for my beta team. And they're all
yeah,
open-ended questions because I want to know how it made them feel. I don't want them to point out a comma I missed or an extra comma that's in a line.
mm,
I've pay editors for that. We'll get that. I don't care about that. I care about what did that paragraph make you feel, because I'm trying to get that paragraph to make you feel something. And I'm hoping it's this. But if it's that, then I've got a problem. And so that's really where the author voice, I think, comes into play probably the most. And that's, in my opinion, what you're trying to create when you're creating a strong author voice. It's a voice that the readers see what you want them to see, feel what you want them to feel, hear what you want them to hear, experience what you want them to experience. How do we use prose in a way that they don't see the words, they just see the story?
ultimately, what you want from your character voice is you want your reader, in the case of a good guy or someone, like someone you want them to read for, you want your reader to feel like they're friends with this person, and you know stuff about your friends, right? And like their views, their philosophies, their outlook on life, all of that kind of thing. And if you're going to get your readers to be friends with your characters and to think about your characters and to remember those characters, the character voice needs to communicate to the reader what your character's philosophy, outlook, life expectancy, all of that is. Because if that happens, your reader is committed to the character and they will follow that character through the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a nutshell, it got encapsulated last night in my critique group. Somebody brought a piece where the character knew something about the future that you
Mm-hmm.
can't know. And one of the group members was like, this doesn't work for me. And I'm like, you're 100% right. It doesn't work for you. It worked flawlessly for me.
Yeah.
And everyone else in the group felt like it worked great, because what it literally said was, the character went, I know this thing that I can't know. I don't know why I know this thing. I can't tell you that at all, but I do know it's this thing.
Mm.
And knowing that the character doesn't know why they believe it is enough for me to be comfortable and not feel like there's a gaping hole in the story, because it was a major thing that more than likely the entire story's revolving around. Like, we're going to find out. It's so odd because and I told the author that, I was like, because if we don't, you've just made this massive Chekhov's gun that you know everyone's going to be pissed off
Yeah.
about. But yeah, I think it's important as long as the reader knows what the character knows. And if the character doesn't know something, just make sure the reader knows that the character doesn't know. And then they're like, yeah, well, then I don't know it because I only know what this character knows. And if they don't know it, then I can't know it.
Yeah.
And so that's really all I think a reader needs, is they just need to be comfortable. Like, if the reader believes that, they can walk through walls. I mean, if the character believes they can walk through walls, and then later in the story they just go, well, I'm just going to walk through this wall, and they walk up and smash their nose and get a bloody nose, the reader doesn't feel jilted
Yeah.
because they knew that the character really believed that, so they believed that, and then both the reader and the character found out at the same time you can't walk through walls. You don't have that ability. And so the reader doesn't feel like the character lied to them. They just feel like they learned something at the same time that the character learned it.
Man, do you remember Heroes?
Oh yeah.
That that first season was the first season where Peter learns he can fly. Well,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
the other guy learns he can fly, and Peter learns he can borrow powers eventually.
Right.
But that first time that Peter jumped off the building and he couldn't
And he
fly.
slams into the ground.
Well, his brother caught him. No, his brother caught him and
Oh,
threw him.
right.
And it was just like, well, so funny. But
Yeah,
that
I
was
don't
exactly that. It
understand.
was like, I can fly, I can fly. No, I can't fly.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand how Tim Kring hit everything perfect in season one and then just lost the script. But because he doesn't like superheroes and he doesn't know superheroes, and somehow that first season of
That
Heroes was
first season
just
was,
amazing. And then he
but
just couldn't quite hold it.
I feel like the first season should have been the whole story.
Could have been.
You know what I mean? Like
It could have been
that.
a movie about finding the serial killer, the superhero serial killer.
Yeah, yeah. It
Really
could
could
have.
have been.
It could have. It was a 20 episode season. It could have been
Hmm.
just that season.
Yeah.
You know. And I think that would have told an amazing story all by
Hmm.
itself. Like
Hmm.
Save the Cheerleader, Save the World. That whole season was just peak.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
gorgeous. And
Somehow
then
he
it just,
just knocked it out of the park.
yeah.
And then there was still some good. There really was. Kring didn't lose everything, but it maybe it's because the
The
bar was
writers,
set.
season two was okay-ish, but the problem was then the writer's strike hit, and that
Yeah.
really killed it.
Yeah.
That slaughtered it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But anyway, some really good character voices in
yeah.
that show as well.
Absolutely.
Um,
That little Chinese, Japanese
Hero,
dude,
Hero,
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 yeah, Hero.
which
He
is
was
so
fantastic.
funny that he named the hero Hero.
I can bend time and space.
Yes.
That was so good.
It was. Nissan Versa. Nissan
Yeah.
Versa. Yeah, I love that character. I loved Hero. He was
He
probably
was
my favorite character.
fantastic. He
Yeah,
was
because he was
absolutely.
he was the character that was the boyish excitement
Mm.
of, the 5-year-old excitement of being in superhero world.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yatta!
yeah, yeah. He was, and that's just infectious. It's just infectious for, especially in a story that's that dark and that
Mm.
gritty, to have a character that's just such a wide-eyed toddler with
Yeah,
everything is amazing and everything is great and everything is awesome. That's a great character to have as an offset
yeah.
to such a dark, dark world.
I
So,
will ad I will admit I really liked the cheerleader as well. Like I
yeah,
really liked the cheerleader. She was so ridiculously like, this is attempt number 200 and whatever. Wha-
there's a very scientific way to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I said, those and this really plays into, now this is obviously TV and not prose, but we're
Yeah.
still talking about character development. And it just showed. I mean, every one of those characters were so memorable because they were so unique. You know, the artist with
The
his drug
artist.
addiction and,
Mm.
you know, his self doubt and everything like that. You know, as an artist myself, I totally related to all of that. It's one of the reasons why I stay away from anything that's addictive because I know I have an addictive personality, which
The
a
two
lot of artists
brothers,
do.
the
Huh?
the flying man Peter, I can't remember his brother's name, but they were very distinctive characters,
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah. Nathan. And
Um,
they were very, very different.
yeah.
You know,
The
Peter
Indian
was your
dude who's looking for the
politician.
heroes.
Yeah.
The
Pe-
the Mahindra.
yeah. Mahindra
Yeah.
was an amazing character.
Mm.
Um, but even the villain, even what's his name?
It was so good. Siler. So,
Siler.
so good.
He was everything Dexter was if Dexter was a piece of garbage.
Yes. Yeah. And
So
what the great thing is about Siler is they gave him nuance and reason for why he was the way he was, right?
yeah,
He suffered as a child, etc., etc. Like all of those things were there, but they never tried to make that an excuse or an explanation or to make him
right.
have sympathy because of that. You know that he was created by these things, but he's still the villain. No one
Yeah.
looks at him and goes, "Oh, shame." No.
No.
You're like,
Yeah.
that dude's got to be stopped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Even though you loved him as a character, you also
yeah,
wanted to see him dead.
yeah,
Like he needs to pay. And
yeah.
that's just like I said, Tim Curran did a lot. I actually got an advanced reader copy of his first novel. I can't
Mm.
remember what it was called. It's over there somewhere. Um, and you know, met him at the event when I got the thing and everything like that. It's not as good as Hero season one. I would just say that. Um, it's definitely a TV script writer trying to write prose and write it like he's writing a TV script. It's
Yeah,
not terrible, but it is hard to make that transition from
yeah.
script writer to prose. I'm so happy that I started as a prose writer and then moved into Hollywood and wrote scripts because the coming the other way is it's like
Mm.
it's literally like, okay, I know how to fly a 747. I know everything there is to know about flying a 747. I've never been in a Volkswagen, but you want me to now drive a Volkswagen. It's like, okay, I can fuddle through it. But the other way, going from script writing to prose, is like, you know how to ride a bicycle. Now you need to fly a 747. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't translate.
I've recently critted a guy who started as a screenwriter, and like the dialogue is sharp and on point,
Yeah,
but the prose is atrocious.
yeah.
It
And that's
reads
normally the
like a
way it is.
stage direction
Yeah,
because it is.
yeah, because that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that I went the other way. I feel sorry for them because I've had so many private clients that
Yeah.
are, well, my business partner with the writers room. You know, he was
Yeah.
in Hollywood for 20 years and now he's trying to take a lot of the scripts that he didn't sell and prosify them. And
Mm.
so I'm working with him to try and help him not be a script writer in prose.
Yeah.
And it's a journey. It's a journey. But
Yeah.
all right, what else? We kind of, I mean, we've talked a lot about everything. I think the one thing, and if there's something else that you want to talk about, we can do that too. But I do want to kind of touch on stereotypes and cliches. Like, what are
Mm.
some advice that you have? Like, what's wrong with that? If there is anything wrong with that, can it work? And what are some tips on maybe either avoiding them or utilizing them better?
So I will actually lean on heroes to give a perfect example of how to get a cultural stereotype right versus wrong. Okay, so we just spoke about Hero, and he's like
Hmm.
yatta, and he's conversation like they leaned a lot on a lot of Japanese culture, but they leaned on Japanese culture in context, you know, and there was context around Hero as a person living within his culture.
And not only that, his best friend, and I can't remember that character's name, but so Hiro was your more typical nerdy anime geek Japanese person, and his friend was the more typical, no, we get up before dawn, we work
Yeah,
all day long until
yeah,
well after the sun goes down, and then you pass out on the street for an hour and go back to work because that's what you do.
yeah,
Like, so they really did have both kind of sides of the Japanese culture
yeah.
that they leaned on for that. And I really love that dichotomy that they were really, really good friends, but their outlooks on life and how they saw the world around them clashed a lot.
Now I'll give you a way to use the Japanese culture poorly. Let's say you're writing a fantasy novel that's 100% based on medieval Europe. Yeah, you're drawing on all of it. You have knights, you have
Kings,
feudalism,
earls.
all of those things. All right. So you've got a kind of European setup um, with all of those things. But then for some reason, your knights have katanas because you really like katanas.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? These things don't develop in a vacuum. You're taking one aspect of the culture without anything around why that developed and going like, yeah, but now I'm giving them to these European knights. Firstly, it's disrespectful to the Japanese culture because you're just importing it without any context. But it's also disrespectful to the European culture. Like, what, you think they couldn't make swords?
Yeah.
It's just take
I mean,
put take the things in take if you want to have a knight society, a feudalism society, all right, and you want them to have katanas, that's 100% fine, but integrate it.
yeah. Figure out
Why did
why.
they develop a folding technique? Do they have very poor iron? Because that's why it developed in the
Right.
East, right?
Right.
They had poor iron, and they didn't have as much iron, so they had to like fold it and strengthen it and fold it and strengthen it, and that was where that technique comes from. That's why katanas have that little wave pattern on it,
Yeah.
right? So 100% just make your iron reduced, but then also don't put your knights in full plate armor. Because the
Because
reason why the Japanese had bamboo armor is because they didn't have the
iron.
iron to make full plate. If they could have made full plate armor, they would have. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
And they would have made bigger, heavier swords.
exactly.
Easier because you
Yeah.
can knock out, a blacksmith can knock out a good bastard sword in, a couple days,
Yeah.
whereas a katana is more than a couple
Yes.
days.
Because you have to strengthen the iron so
Yeah.
much because
Yeah.
you're working with poor quality ore. So, and that's what I mean. Like take take that into context. Don't put
Hmm.
your knights. You want to have knights in feudalism in a European society, that's fine. But don't put your knights in metal armor.
Right.
Figure out some other kind of armor. Like make metal armor really, really, really expensive. Um, and then you can have your katanas. But
Right.
without it, you're just taking a thing that another culture has and slapping it without context into yours. Like
Yeah.
integration. You can borrow from a million cultures. You can borrow from any culture you like. I'm not gatekeeping in the least here, but borrow with respect.
Yeah.
Understand why it developed in that culture and integrate it into yours.
So when I'm teaching comedy writing, and I don't teach it outside, but like when I was
Mm.
working on the cartoon Fiend Folly, um, that unfortunately cancer didn't kill me, but cancer did kind of kill Fiend Folly.
Yeah.
Um, but when I was talking to my writing team, because we did a lot of politically incorrect humor,
Mm.
and I said, look, here's my rule. First of all, no matter how clean your joke is, no matter how kid glove your joke is, you're going to offend somebody because there is
Yeah.
somebody out there who wants to be offended. Somebody out there is offended because you have a blue curtain behind you. I guarantee it. They just are. They're looking for it. They deserve to be offended. Like, I'm happy with them being offended. But when it comes to writing, a politically incorrect joke or whatever, if the majority of the whatever it is that you're picking on, culture, group, whatever, if the majority of them are laughing with you, you're golden.
Mm.
If none of them are laughing with you, then you're just pissing in their cornflakes. Like
Yeah.
that's all you're doing. And so it's the same thing when it comes to this stuff. If you want to avoid, it's like I get put on a lot of panels on, writing divorce cultures, writing other things than what you are. Um, and for me, it's so simple. I don't understand why so many people struggle with like, well, how do you write? Like, I'm white. How do I write a black person? Or, how do I write a different sexual orientation than me or a different gender or whatever? It's very simple, in my opinion. You don't. You write a great character,
Yeah.
and then they are also a black character or a gay character or whatever. And that's what like Hero. That's a great example. And Ando, somebody threw up his name
Yeah.
in the chat room. Ando. Those are both great characters who were Japanese.
Yeah.
And so when
They
you
weren't Japanese first and then characters. They
right,
were great
they weren't
characters.
stereotypes of a Japanese caricature. They
Yes.
were great, fully fleshed out human dynamic characters from Japan. And so therefore pulling Japanese culture into their story, no one is going to no one's going to sweat that. It's when it's when you do stuff like you have weird robots that come from another planet, and for some reason they have gold teeth and they talk ghetto. You do stuff like that, and that's a little not good.
That comes across as a hella stereotype on your
Yeah,
part,
yeah.
or like all the women in your book are evil wizards. Oh, sorry,
Or
evil
or
witches.
or that.
I mean,
Yeah, when you do stuff like this, I mean that's it. So like when you do something like that, you're trying to create that thing. And when you
yeah,
try to create that thing, all you have is the stereotype stuff,
yeah.
as opposed to creating a great character who is also that thing.
And
And
that's the
then that's
problem. I
where,
mean, it's the problem with any stereotype. Even like it doesn't matter whether whether you it doesn't matter who you're punching at or who you think you're punching at. If you stereotype someone, even if it's someone you think should be universally hated or whatever,
yes,
you end up with a caricature
yeah, and not a character.
and not a character. Yeah.
And there is a huge difference between a caricature. Somebody sent me this not too long ago. So there's a difference between the character of Klain
Yeah.
and the caricature of Klain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So someone
100%.
someone sent me that. I thought it was awesome.
And it's just like that's it, like even a villainous character, even a terrible character, even if you feel like their ideology is such that everybody should universally hate it, even if you're writing a fascist, let's say,
Yeah.
right, an actual old-timey, jingoistic, nationalistic fascist, you still have to make them a character first.
We just talked about Cyrus
Yeah, Siler.
or Siler.
Cyrus. No,
Like,
Siler.
yeah,
Yeah.
Siler. That guy is so dynamic and such a deep, interesting character. Yeah, he's got to die.
Yeah.
Like, he's a villain,
Yes.
but he is a character that you can't wait to see come on screen again. You
And
can't
he's a
wait.
great character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Now, somebody in the chat said that Dahl, as in Roald Dahl, does amazing caricatures. And that is 100% true. But Roald Dahl's style is one of caricatures. The caricatures are the point. The
right.
whole world is caricatures in Roald Dahl's books. I mean, if you think of Matilda, Mrs. Trenchbull takes little girls and little boys by their ears and throws them like they were throwing hammers. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like the absurdism is the point.
Right.
It's based on kind of the Lewis Carroll, the off with their heads, the Alice through the looking glass kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is a very specific style of writing. And if you can write like that, you absolutely do use caricatures all the way. right?
Also depends on the audience and the genre and the
Yeah.
tone and everything else.
But those people who write in that style know what they're doing.
Right.
That's that's a very different
Or
thing.
at least they have lucked up and more than 80, that 80%
Yeah,
number appreciates what they're doing.
yeah,
So I'm not going to say that most authors know what we're doing. We're just all trying to do the best we can. And some of us just happen to hit the mark, and some of us miss it by a little bit, and some of us miss it by a lot.
no,
Like
100%. But
like
I mean, it's
robots
like,
with gold teeth and
yeah,
ghetto
yeah.
accents. Some
But
miss it a lot.
I miss it by a lot. Um, but it's like people like Terry Pratchett and
Yeah.
Roald Dahl who write with humor. Like
Hmm.
that is just, like I can write a few jokes, I can write some light humor, but I'm not a satirical writer. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like I'm not a Roald Dahl, I'm not a Terry Pratchett or a who's our the end of the world guy. So long and thanks for all the fish.
Oh, Douglas Adams.
Douglas Douglas Adams, yeah. Like those guys were, I mean,
Yeah.
like that's a
I'd
different
throw
style.
I'd throw Robert Aspirin into that group too, with
Yeah,
his Myth World series.
that's a very different
And oh
style.
my
And
goodness, one
then you do caricatures because
somebody who's a friend of mine who is massively famous, but still I don't feel gets the attention. Phil
yeah,
Folio is somebody who I think is an amazing comedic
mm,
writer, and he doesn't get the accolades.
mm,
He's up there with the Terry Pratchett's, and now he doesn't write a lot of prose. He is writing some now.
yeah,
He was mostly in comics back in the day,
yeah,
but yeah, he's also in that same vein of people that can use humor throughout their narrative to tell a story.
100%. And like as I say, that's a different thing because often there the caricatures are the humor,
Hmm.
and it is kind of the point.
Hmm. Well, and
Um,
that's the difference between the genres. I mean, if you're going
yeah,
into fairy tales, if you're going into comedy like this, if you're going into,
mm,
me and you tend to write more realistic, dark,
yeah.
heavier things. And if you had a Jar Jar Binks in one of our stories, it would not work, I don't think. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish
Yeah,
and what you
yeah,
can do. But you can do stuff like a really dark, gritty superhero world and have a character who's a wide-eyed 5-year-old toddler
yeah.
that's super excited about everything. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish and how you roll it out and the voice that you give them and the voice and how that character voice matches your authorial voice.
Yeah. And I think that that's also important. You don't want to completely jar away from it. And,
Hmm.
the age of the character is important for their character voice as well. You don't
Hmm.
want to choose like big words
Right.
for like
Well,
an
even the
10-year-old.
education level.
Yeah, for
Garcia
age
is
and
one of
education level.
Yeah, Garcia is one of my favorite TV sitcom writers. He did My Name is Earl and
Mm,
Raising Hope and that whole line of series
mm,
that takes place within the same zone of the fictitious world. But like in Raising Hope, the mom in there, and they're just white trailer trash. Like these people are just
mm,
just the lowest of low hick kind of things. That's what he writes. That's the world he comes
mm,
from. And so it's in this world I come from, which is probably why I love those shows so much because it's literally just me sitting down and watching old home videos of my family, just professionally done. But the mom on there always wants everyone to think she's smart. And so she always uses, in every episode, she uses a grandiose word.
mm.
Completely wrong. That completely, it sounds sort of like the word that she was going for, but it's sort of like, I have a dad joke where if I get a parking spot right in the front row, and I was like, look at us, we must be impotent. We get the front row. And so she did stuff like that all the time, where it sort of sounds like the word you were going for, but it means something very, very, very
That
different.
word, I don't think it means what you
I
think it
don't, I
means.
don't think it means what you think it means. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
stuff like that. But that's a very now, when we're talking about character voice with her doing that thing in every episode and there's just one time, one line. It's not like he was like, oh, she's going to say impotent for important 20 times during this 22-minute It's once. It's one time that they just have a situation that it organically fits in, and bam, you get it. But everyone who's a fan of Raising Hope is like, oh yeah, the mom and her stupid word. Like it's such a massive impact on that character.
I will say that, like, My Name is Earl is probably a great example of writing about a stereotype in a
Yeah.
way that still feels respectful,
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
absolutely do feel like Hicks, but it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like the author's looking down on them,
Right. Right. That is the
you
key.
know?
When I say it feels like I'm watching old home movies, I don't mean that I'm hating on where I came from. I mean it's just comfortable. It's why I
Yeah.
call it my pilgrimage. I watch all 4 seasons of My Name is Earl and all 3 seasons of Raising Hope every probably 2 years.
Mm.
And I just go through all 7 seasons, and I every time it's amazing, and every time I laugh, and every time it's just the funnest experience for me to just go back into those worlds and just kind of wallow in, because they're the beautiful thing about it is, even though they're all pretty dumb and they're all doing dumb things, most of them, I mean, even like the villains kind of have a good heart. I mean,
Mm.
they still, like his ex-wife who's trying to kill him in the beginning of My Name is Earl. Joey's still she's a horrible human being, but she still does have a good heart. I mean, she cares about her kids. She cares about, like, and then her character growth through the 4 seasons is fantastic.
To be fair, Earl kind of deserved it in the beginning.
Exactly, but he's also kind of a, like I said, they're all horrible, but they're all also
Yeah.
trying the best with what they got.
And
In
it and they do feel like fully fleshed out characters for all that they're stereotypes. They don't feel like stereotypes. It doesn't feel contemptuous. It doesn't feel like that like somebody's looking down on them and
right,
going like those people over there,
right,
giving
and I think
robots freaking gold teeth and.
right, and that's where I was going. Like Hiro and Ando, they no one is looking down on Japanese culture. It's just a part of this world. It's a thing. And I think if you stick to that, that's the attitude to have, to make sure that you're not going down any type of caricature, any type of bad, because you can have stereotypes. There
Yeah,
stereotypes exist for a reason. It's not
yeah,
like we think about a certain group away, but none of them have ever done that. Like
yeah,
not a single one. We just made it up. Like no, there's a reason.
yeah.
So
But that's the thing. Have respect for the real world cultures you draw from. Understand their context and why the things that you're drawing into your world exist. And have respect for your characters.
yeah,
You know, don't treat them as walking, talking tropes or walking, talking lessons or walking, talking stereotypes. Treat them as people,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you'll be fine
And
overall.
I guess the last thing we should say, because we've gone our time, but the
Yeah.
last thing we should say is I'm going to take what you said and just get all feels here and say, and that's how we should treat each other too, kids. We should not look at each other as groups. We should treat each other as individuals. And if you're a hateful person and want to hate, it works even better, because there are a lot of people out there who you can individually hate for a lot of really cool reasons other than something stupid like the group that they belong to.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, if you are a hater, you can find it better to personally hate. Or you can be like me and just try to love everybody and find things to love individually people for. So whatever floats your boat, but you should treat everybody as an individual, including your
And
characters.
I think that is a great note on which to end this episode. We will see you soon for another one.
Bye. If you are ready to take your writing to the next level and work with a group of highly motivated, dedicated writers who are all working to not only improve their writing, but improve your writing, plus you get to work with me on a weekly basis, then I'll encourage you to check out writersroom.us. This is a website that I have created that I really wish I had 30 years ago. It's everything a writer needs to become a better writer. Not only do we do weekly critique sessions, both from other members as well as me, we have daily writing sessions, I do monthly classes, Q&As, we have activities, I do all sorts of learning exercises, such as I do a quarterly writing prompt contest, and just tons and tons and tons of things. So if you're ready to get serious about your writing and you want to actually finish that novel and have a chance of it being published, then I encourage you to head on over to the writer's room and join me there. And as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Inner Dragon, I'll go one step more. If you would like to get 50% off for 3 months, reach out to me. There's a million ways you can do that. You can do it through starvingwriterstudio.com, drakeu.com, any of my social medias such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever. Reach out to me, say that you would like to check out the Writer's Room for 50% off, and I will send you a link that will allow you to do just that. So hopefully you're ready to start getting serious about writing, and I'll see you in the Writer's Room.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Marie Mullaney, your co-host on this literary adventure. Our goal is to provide you with valuable insights and discussions on writing. If you believe in our mission, please like and subscribe our podcast. Sharing our episodes with your community not only helps us grow, but also contributes to a richer, more diverse conversation about storytelling. We appreciate your support. For a deeper understanding of the topics we've discussed, head over to Just in Time Worlds on YouTube. It is a treasure trove where fantasy meets history and science. Every Tuesday, you'll find new videos that delve into the intricacies of world building, drawing from our rich real-world history. Whether you're a writer, a role player, or just a fantasy enthusiast, Just in Time Worlds offers unique insights that will enrich your perspective. Check it out and join the journey of crafting incredible worlds.